Welcome to the Caribbean Property Investing Podcast, where we share real-life experiences for successful Caribbean property entrepreneurs. Learn about their successes, challenges, and strategies to help you create your plan for financial freedom. Now let's get started.
Happy New Year! Welcome to episode 44 of the Caribbean Property Investing Podcast, where I bring you real-life stories of Caribbean entrepreneurs who gain financial freedom or are on their way to financial freedom or financial independence as a result of their investment in property. The whole idea of investing in property is to have enough cash flow to allow you to own your time. And with that freedom, you can choose to spend more time on yourself, more time with your friends and family, more time to work in your community, or even just more time to pursue your own passion. I'm your host, Ansel Mathre, and this show is going to be a little different because it's just going to be you and me. Usually, I'm here interviewing guests with their inspiring stories or bringing you insight from the investors across the Caribbean. But today, I want to share some of my story. You heard some of it in episode 1, so you can go back and do a quick recap. But we want to talk about how I retired from my corporate job in telecoms at 49 years old and transitioned into full-time real estate investing with a portfolio right now of 19 condos and growing on this beautiful island of St. Lucia, the Helen of the West Indies. Of course, it wasn't always easy, and there are plenty of lessons learned along the way. But if you've ever dreamed of achieving financial independence, this episode is for you. I'm going to break it all down, how I got started, following from episode 1, the challenges I face, the key strategies I use to scale the investments, and how I managed to create enough passive income to walk away from a corporate job, which by and large I enjoyed and I benefited from a lot, and I grew, and I'm tremendously thankful to my employer, my former employer. But you will hear how I was able to leave this job and retire 20, 25, 15 years ahead of schedule. And that schedule is just based on the traditional 65-year-old typical retirement age in some Caribbean islands. At 49 years old, I walked away from the comfortable telecom job in St. Lucia, not because I had to, but because I'd built a portfolio just big enough to allow me some economic or financial freedom that I did not have to be doing a full-time 8 to 4:30, 8 to 5 job every single day. I didn't have to wait until 65. Now, 18 months or so into retirement, and for the benefit of those who are wondering, how I define retirement is the ability to have enough cash flow, enough income being produced by your investments, in my case, property rentals, property sales, to allow you the time to do whatever you so desire when you wake up in the day and not have to go sat at a desk or not have to answer to a boss in a normal, traditional 8 to 4:30 full-time job. I've subscribed to a movement that's called the FIRE movement, F-I-R-E, and the acronym stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early, and hopefully we can launch our own FIRE movement or our own Caribbean FIRE movement where we get like-minded individuals who have this goal of trying to take back their time, create investments that support their lifestyle and allow them to be more than they would have been if they sat at a desk or in a cubicle, just enjoying their life more. So today, we're going to deep dive into the FIRE movement, and I'm going to share what it's like, or what it has been like retiring at 49, some 18 months later, some of the challenges, some of the victories, some of the lessons, some things that I would not do, but more importantly, how you too can actually achieve that if you so desire. So some of my friends have always asked, well, why did I want to retire early? What brought it about? Why can't I just be like everybody else? Why can't you just do what everybody else does? You work every day, you vacation 20, if you're lucky, 30 days a year. You enjoy Carnival, summer, Christmas, work, get promoted, take loans, buy nice cars, take vacation once a year, have a family, grow old and die. I just felt like there was more to life than that. And if, in fact, you are in a profession that you fully enjoy, then power to you. If you feel like it earns you or you generate enough money from it and you love doing it every day, then that's fine. Maybe this is not for you. But if you feel that you want to do more, you want to have a career change, that you're not necessarily having enough time with your family, that you wish you had more money coming in to allow you to just do something different, then keep on listening. I first got interested in early retirement, FIRE as I found that it became known to be, in working in the telecoms environment. We had a time of maybe a time period of about 7 years where our company changed management like every 18 months. And I saw some excellent, hardworking, intelligent, committed colleagues just lose their jobs simply because the new management, when they came in, they brought their own people. So it didn't matter how good you were. If you were in that role where the new CEO and his team had somebody else bringing in for that job, you would be gone. And that scared me because even though I was not thinking about retirement, I was buying small pieces of land because my grandmother told me land doesn't rot. And instead of buying a car and those flashy things, when you start working while you're still healthy, save money and buy property. And the whole idea was that later on, you would do some apartments on this property as an old man, and collect your rent, from those apartments. But I met a consultant in our team. He was an African, Nigerian, British guy. And he was telling me, so what are my plans for next 10, 15, 20 years? I think a week before he was going back because the project was finished. I told him, he said, but why you have to wait until you 50, 60, 65 to do the apartments? Do them now. Because if you lost your job now, then you can't pay the loans. So immediately went into action, started panicking a little bit. Go back to episode 1. You hear about the story. I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, started reading real estate books, and then I started the real estate journey. Having said that, while I was on that journey and over the last 20, I spent 23 years in the company, we would have maybe established right now a portfolio of 19 units. I thought that it was a good time because about 8 years ago, I lost my wife to cancer. And even though we retired early, it still was not enough time to spend with her. For my young son, my young daughter, they still don't have enough time with her. So there are no guarantees, and you can never be prepared for what challenges life throws your way. But with God, there's grace, and with grace, you can overcome almost anything. There are hard days and there are easier days, but you have the memories, and it's a reminder that you also must live in your moment, and you also must try to do the things that you love to do because nothing's guaranteed and you're not here forever. So, going back to the FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early. The whole idea of the FIRE movement was adopted, 50, 20, 40, a long time ago. And typically in the Western countries, Europe, America, Canada, the idea is that you save between 50 to 80% of your salary and you live kind of modestly. You live a minimalist lifestyle where you're not extravagant. up to a point where you save enough and you invest enough that you have achieved what you call your FIRE number. Typically, your FIRE number is a figure that when you have that amount in the bank, by having withdrawals of no more than 4% per year, you are able to let that money stretch and last for at least 25 years. I know I've just said a lot. So you save, you get to your FIRE number. Your FIRE number is where you have expenses. You have enough money to cover your expenses for a period that presumes you will be living for at least 25 years. Some people, the FIRE number is $1.5 million. Some people, the FIRE number is $3 million, which is your expenses times 12 months times 25 years. Have that figure in a lump sum, and then you live off it moderately, but it's invested, typically in the stock market. Now, in the Caribbean, we have some stock exchanges, but I am not an investor in the stock market, largely because I made early investments in other businesses that I lost money, and I kind of pivoted to real estate, and I thought that, I still think that I can see, touch, and feel. Out of the strategy that we have, which we'll talk about later, I feel comfortable that real estate is the best vehicle for me. But read some more about the FIRE movement. The Caribbean market is developing a lot, very, very rapidly. Markets like Jamaica, Trinidad, Barbados, and now we have the Eastern Caribbean Stock Exchange. We have professionals getting better every day. You have government bonds as well. You have treasury bills. There are a lot of instruments that you can actually now use if you are interested in building a portfolio that includes stock. Now, you always hear the term about having a diversified portfolio. So admittedly, I recognize one of the risks in my strategy. My portfolio is not very diversified. The diversification that I have in my portfolio is in my location of my properties. I try to have a sea view everywhere, proximity to amenities, proximity to tourism hotspots, proximity to transport routes. My target market is the diaspora market with a little more disposable income than locally. I also build multiple, sell enough to pay back the investment. So we have free cash flowing units, and I have one mortgage at a time, and I keep on rinsing and repeating. So every time I do a building, I pay off the bank or the investors, and I have little babies, free and clear cash flowing, and I continue the process. I do partnerships as well with maybe a cousin, a relative, a friend from a company. Do 4 units, sell 2, keep 2. Do 6 units, sell 4, keep 2. And the idea is the same. Do multiple, sell, pay off the investment. You might get some cash profit, keep some profit, but you also retain some free cash flowing units. That was a lot. All right. So now you get a better understanding of what the FIRE movement is about. Instead of investing in stock and cash, I've built up some cash, and I've created free cash flowing small condominium units, 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom units. The real estate vertical or sector is not indestructible. You will have highs, lows, and that's why I try to protect myself by the choice of locations, type of units, price points, having some cash from the profits, free and clear that you don't have a mortgage. And you keep on expanding, you save, and you try to be efficient as you go along, as you build. Get new technology so you have higher profits, get new designers so your properties have a higher demand, and so you have a lower vacancy rate. Have insurance for liabilities and for disasters as well. So for the FIRE movement, the Caribbean version, at least from my perspective, my experience, instead of investing in stock, my investment is in debt-free, cash-flowing, small, high-value, high-demand, great location, condominium units. Okay, let's fast forward now. Let's go backwards. It was important to me to to retire before I was 50. My first retirement was when I was 41, after doing my first 4 units and then doing a building where I lived with 7 units. So in fact, we had 4 and 7, that's 11 units, of which we sold 2. So we had 9 units. And I thought that we didn't need more than that. It was okay, we could live off that. But after a while, I felt like we needed to expand. Opportunities came about where we wanted to add more to the portfolio. And so I went back to work 2 years later. So I spent 2 years out, 2 fantastic years. I learned so much. I went back to work only because the bank would not give you a mortgage based on rental. And I was going to say, and that's fine, but it's not really fine, because in some countries, like the US, I guess there are different legislation, different practices, different ways for financial institutions to collect the money back, or to get the money from you, or liens on your property. And that's why maybe they could use cash flow, or that's why they use cash flow. But in our jurisdiction and a lot of other Caribbean markets, banks don't use cash flow or rental cash flow as a means of repairing loans. So I had to go back. I chose to go back to work so I can secure another mortgage to continue the process. I was 43 at the time. I ended up staying 6 years. One, because I actually enjoy the people I work with, my good friends and my lifelong friends. And 2, because of COVID. COVID came right before I finished the next project we had, which was a 3-unit, a triplex, in a really great location. So I stayed longer, and that actually helped because I had a job. During COVID, a lot of the world, experienced, great loss, markets, challenges, landlords lost rent. But, I was very fortunate during that time. There was high demand for rental units because a lot of people, expats especially, some of them couldn't go back home. So they had to stay on island. And so a lot of landlords had issues with where people couldn't pay their rent because they didn't have their jobs. But some of the landlords had people who couldn't leave, foreigners who couldn't leave. And so they had that secure rental for up to 2 years. And I was fortunate by the grace of God. Now let's fast forward. So I went back to work. I stayed 6 years. COVID came and I'm about to leave. I'm ready to leave. I left before my 50th birthday. I was 49. What was it like the first few months? There was freedom. There was pride because you were able to achieve a goal that you set for yourself. It's important to define retirement, and it might vary. Of course, there's a traditional retirement. Age 65, you don't work anymore. You live off your pension. But now, for the FIRE movement, retirement is just owning your time. You can choose to work if you want to, but the idea is that you do not have to go to work, because you don't need to go to work, because you have other streams of income that can cover your expenses. A lot of people see retirement as lavish and, vacations, your feet up, you living the life. That's not necessarily the case. For us in the FIRE movement, it just means owning your time and not having to go to a 9 to 5 or 8 to 4:30 job. The early months for me, I played a lot of sport. I played golf 3 times a week, which I picked up recently. I played tennis 3 times a week. I adopted pickleball, crazy about that. Went hiking. I traveled a lot. I traveled to Europe many times, Middle East, well, Dubai, because everybody was going. I wanted to see what it was all about. I had a great time. I went to tennis tournaments, golf tournaments, just really spent a lot of time doing things that I wanted to do. I spent more time with my family. Had a lot of coffee meetings, because if you have time now. I had a lot of lunches. But there's one thing that I read about before it happened, which I expected, and that is most of your friends are actually working. So when you retire early, most of your friends are actually working. You may have 2 friends. In my case, probably only had 2 friends. One was self-employed and the other one I guess, was retired too. And we probably met three times a week, lunch or coffee. But it can easily devolve into a lot of time wasting. And people speak about being bored. But I wasn't really bored because I also took on some academic courses, and I also offered myself for civic duty to serve on boards and to serve in organizations and committees that had national interests. Work with the youth, work with tourism. And so I was busy doing those things, while at the same time, I also was in the middle of the two biggest projects of my life, which we'll talk about in the next podcast. One, I did my first reno ever. And if you watch previous podcasts, you would hear me speak about never wanting to do a reno. And I don't think I will do another one. So I did a 2-unit conversion to 4 in a really, really sought after location. Very hard, very challenging, nightmares, very, very tough process, which we will talk about in detail, and I have a lot to share on that. And then I did my biggest project ever, 10 one-bedrooms. So I was very, very, very busy. And so the key challenges of the first few months of retirement is, one, self-management, trying to do too much, getting physical burnout, mental burnout, and you needing to not say yes to every opportunity, because now, for some of you, when people hear that you're no longer working full-time, they will call you to run ideas by you, ideas of all kinds, political careers, new business ventures, family intervention, any area that they think that you could help with. And for some of us, I've always said that anytime somebody asks me something, I don't think anybody wants to ask is because they need it. And so I always want to treat people the way I want to be treated. And so my default answer would have been yes. And that was just maybe too much. While this is going on, remember, so I'm doing all these new things, playing sport, serving on those committees on boards, doing new academic course, having the renovation going on, having the new 10-unit building going on. I also have the existing, at the time when we started, maybe 15 units or 13, 14 units to manage. So I had to hire a property manager because it came to a point where I just couldn't manage it myself anymore. So I had to hire a property manager. And I was looking for a skill set of a combination of skill set, soft skills where you can, greet guests, welcome guests, deal with tenant issues, resolve them amicably, enter the Airbnb listings, Booking.com listings, answer emails, pay bills, and if you have a busted pipe, you might be able to tighten the coupling, change the light bulb. And so those skill sets of trades and doing the bookkeeping and management were probably not easy to find in one person. So I ended up doing all of the soft things while my property manager liaises with all of the tradespeople and anybody else who has to deal with any structural issues, maintenance issues with the properties. So even during that time, in the first 6 to 8 months, you could be lost and it could be overwhelming, but you still have to find time. And when you travel during that time, the time on the plane, the time that you make for yourself, you can actually get closer to finding what your purpose is and what you really want to do with your life. If you're not just about expanding and going on and on and on, building. If you really want to make a contribution and to be your best self, then you can find time to actually get closer to what your purpose really is, or where you find your most joy or most validation. And you could come to that if you're able to balance the amount of time you spend doing those things that are forced on you versus the things that you really want to do and the quiet moments. In terms of what I've learned about money and freedom throughout this process of planning your retirement, setting a vehicle in place to achieve it, and then actually doing it. Money is not as elusive as some of us think. And when I say money, I'm talking about financing, I'm talking about access to it. Because the more time you spend in an area, one, you hone your skills, the more competent you become. But you also, even unconsciously, you also build a reputation. And if you have a good work ethic, if you have good integrity, high integrity, if you're committed, if you try to do what you say you're going to do, it's not always easy. I still work on my punctuality. It's still a challenge. If you show up when you say you're going to, if you're empathetic towards people, if you're kind, if you're caring, then you get opportunities. Invariably, what I found is that not that you can't get money, but you might not be able to get the money in the time frame that you want it. And so you may say, but that's the same problem. Actually, it's not. All you have to try to do is try to move that time frame and make that time frame get aligned to when you're getting the money. So it means that you may have to try not to commit. If you're able to, try not to commit until you get a clear sense of when you're going to get the money. But also you need to be ready for delays. And the last 11 months have been very, very trying, very, very difficult for me as it relates to trying to get necessary documents to complete sales on properties. Dealing with government agencies, it can be frustrating. You need to develop more patience. You need to understand the processes a lot more. You need to get people on the inside. You need to develop relationships. And at the same time, all of this while being optimistic when the disappointments come, but also being very, very, very creative. I've had to find ways of getting access to finance that if you asked me a year before when I didn't have to, I probably wouldn't have been able to think of that as a solution. But as the saying goes, the pressure exerted on coal, that's how a diamond is formed. And what I've discovered, or what I've confirmed in the first 18 months of retirement, you are so much more resilient than you actually think you are. Sometimes when you think that there's no way this can happen, in the stillness of the night, in watching at the city lights, watching at the black or the dark horizon, you can get ideas, you can get, spiritual intervention. Your resourcefulness comes through. And when you are in a corporate job, when you don't have to fend for yourself, it may be not as readily available. The areas that you access in your brain, you might not be able to access them unless you have real crisis. So these are some of the things that I discovered in my first 18 months. All right. So what are some of the things that I would tell someone who's thinking of early retirement? The first thing is start by asking yourself, why is it you want retirement? Why is it that you want to stop working earlier? And sometimes you might be forced to do it, whether it's a physical limitation, you might not be well, or you might have terminal illness, or something that is not planned by yourself. One, what's the reason? You want to pursue your real passion. It's going to make you happier. It's going to make you less stressful because you don't have to be worrying about how bills are going to be paid. You want to spend more time with your children, more time with your family, more time with your friends. You want to go to climb, Mount Everest. You want to go see, the Niagara Falls. You want to go to Tabletop Mountain. Whatever your reason, whatever your why is, make sure your why is clear and your why is strong, because that why, the clarity that is required for that's the clarity is what's going to give you the resolve that you will need when things don't go necessarily how you want or how you expect it to go. So you don't give up and go back and pack it up. You will get offers, and even when you retire early, you will get offers for employment. And then you're going to determine if you want to take it, and if you take it under what conditions, or if you don't want to take it at all. So, one, understanding why you want to do it. It must be strong enough to keep you determined and resolute and committed even when things don't go according to plan. Two, you plan properly. You plan with a backup. So if you are saving and you need to save 40% of your salary or a certain dollar amount, try to save a little more. Try to save a little more. Because if you save a little more, you're going to get your number quicker. There's one thing that I discovered during that process is medical insurance. For those of you who know, I lost my wife to cancer, and medical insurance, even with medical insurance was what kept you from going bankrupt. It depends on the medical situation that you have. I had a friend who, after 2 weeks, that person's insurance was exhausted because they had $1 million coverage. They had to fly to the US for surgery, and after 2 or 3 surgeries, $300,000 US wiped off the $1 million insurance cap that you may have. So you need to have good medical insurance, international medical insurance, one that doesn't have a cap value, or if it has a cap value, it certainly has to be more than $1 million EC. The medical insurance I have now, which I hope I never have to use it has an amount that renews every year. So let's say the figure is $1 million US. It's not for the lifetime. It renews every year. And that deductible, which is the amount of money that you need to spend before you can access that insurance, make sure you have that money saved aside. So insurance as a bankruptcy mitigation. Of course, it's to save your life. Of course, it's the most important quality of the insurance, medical insurance. But insurance, good medical insurance, if you have savings that you build in towards a goal, you need to have insurance which would prevent you from having to go and take that money to use there. Knowing your why, having insurance, getting a plan for yourself, agreeing a plan for yourself as to what is it that you want to do, what is it that you plan to do when you retire. What does the day 1 looks like? What does day 400 look like? First 6 months, first 3 months, first 6 months, first year. What do they look like? Yeah, what would you like to be doing? Now, of course, you cannot plan everything. You may have that plan, a framework of it, and you'll find yourself being pulled into different directions. New pastures may develop. You still have to make sure that you're able to stick to your budget, whatever that amount is. And having property and rentals, it means that you have a cycle. You have a 30-day cycle, rent cycle, that you get your money from, that you top up. So if you're going to be living off the rentals, you have to make sure that you understand that you get money maybe in the last week of the month, and so your payments and your costs that you're carrying for your expenses, you have to have that cadence in how you address them. Savings aside will allow you to deal with emergencies, but just knowing that because you don't have stocks and interest, and even when you have stocks and bonds and interest, they may come quarterly, they may come semi-annually, they may come annually. But you also need to have that nest egg, that stash, that lump sum, that if you have to access it, you can access it. The thing about our Caribbean F.I.R.E with property is it means that we also have another way of getting lump sums. With development, if you develop, which I'm as well, I'm not just renting, I'm also building all the time, is that with the sales and the profits, you can have that accelerated earning that you can add to your lump sum. So these are just 3 considerations. 1, your why. 2, having insurance as a mitigation for bankruptcy. 3, planning how you're going to get there and what you're going to do. And so far, I will say one more is resisting the urge of spending carelessly. One of the qualities, or maybe the defining quality or the defining characteristic of the FIRE movement typically is that the people who achieve it are prolific, highly disciplined savers. But when you get to FIRE, there could be the urge to treat yourself a little more lavishly because you can, of taking, a bigger chunk out of the enjoyment apple, out of the enjoyment pie, because you say, you know what, life is short. I don't know if I'm going to live to see the 25 years that I've actually saved the money for. I can enjoy some of it now. You still have to be very conscious of it, and it's balancing enjoying today, but knowing that you still have to keep enough for the long run. And that's why I think that our Caribbean F.I.R.E with property maybe allows us to do that, because we can do one project, and then from the proceeds of that project only, we can treat ourselves a little more lavishly. So these are just some of the consideration that comes to mind, or that you must keep in mind when thinking of early retirement. A note before we move to the next section: you will change, your needs will change, and what you find happening is that things that you could now afford, that you think you wanted, you suddenly realize that $300,000 car, I'm struggling. I don't need it. I don't need to have a big house anymore. I can downsize, go and live somewhere else, something small, and just be light. Say you want to do 1 month on the Amalfi Coast, you want to go to Santorini for a month, you want to go to St. Kitts Music Festival, go Dominica for a month, go Trinidad for Carnival. You can just tread light. Your taste will change, but the whole idea is that you still have to remain grounded, and enjoy the journey. Enjoy the journey. Some people, who, as I said a while ago, might want to change, and suddenly that luxury car they wanted to buy, they don't want it anymore. And some may say, you know what, I'm going to have it. Once you keep in mind that you're in this for the long run, if you're lucky, and that luck means if you're blessed, if you're healthy, to last the time that you plan for it. Okay. One of the other characteristics of Caribbean F.I.R.E is that, unlike other countries, US, UK, Canada, people in the Caribbean F.I.R.E may choose to have other side incomes. In addition to your stocks, well, we said properties and rentals, those who have stocks and government bonds or cash deposits may also decide to do some small businesses, some side hustles, some tourism projects, some online businesses. But anything you do, you still have to remember, you need to have a full understanding of the environment within which you operate, so as to plan for it adequately and not be surprised or caught off guard, resulting in, trauma, both to you and to your portfolio. Okay. So just summarizing that little area here, some of the steps that you should kind of use to guide you to achieve FIRE, Caribbean F.I.R.E. Save aggressively and start investing early. Start looking for land early. start understanding what works, what's in high demand, the areas as well. Start understanding what instruments are available in your country or even in other islands close by. Do your research because it's going to be a mixture of properties and, if you want, some stocks as well as your savings. So save aggressively and invest early. Our experience, we have experience in investing in real estate only along with savings, where you invest for cash as well as for cash from the sale, as well as ongoing debt-free monthly rental income. Create multiple income streams. That way you can diversify kind of your risk, and to ensure that if you may have vacancy in one building this month, you might be able to get something from your online store. You may be able to get something from maybe your little tourism project, or even you have some kind of consulting. And that consulting just maybe like doing business plans. Now you have AI, you could do so much more. Don't rely just on your one source of income. As always, a key fundamental characteristic of the FIRE movement is to live below your means. Just because you have the money and you have the cash flow, that doesn't mean that you need to spend it all in 1 month. Remember, you're in this for the long run. But you have to find a balance where you are frugal, relatively frugal, because of the marathon that you're on, but also you can actually enjoy life while you still have it, because we don't know how many of those 25 years you're going to be living. And find a community. We know that it's not easy to find like-minded individuals, especially in this space of retiring early, before 50, before 45. But I assure you there are people around, and this podcast, after you hear it, share it. Send to your friends, send to people that you think might be thinking, or might be thinking about this or spoken about it, or just contact us. Send us an email or WhatsApp, send us a comment, check our Instagram page, our Facebook page, and we would talk to anybody. We would be, any way we could help, we would do that. So on that note, we can probably talk about how we can grow this movement a little faster or make it bigger. And that recognizing the fact that most Caribbean people, and I say it just from my experience, don't believe early retirement is possible. In fact, one of the things I did not say is that you might be ridiculed in some circles for one, just the goal of thinking, how could you think that you want to retire early? One, are you lazy? Do you think you're special? You can't survive. You don't have enough grit. You're not tough enough to last in the workforce. You a weakling, so you're bailing out. People may say that, the other extreme, you're showing off. You're showing off. You want to retire. So even our parents, even some of our parents actually, those, they can be supportive, but they also want to know, what you going to do? So why you want to retire early? And fun fact, that some of us would have earned 10 times more in our career than our parents. Our parents probably have higher savings levels than they do. My mother is my backup, just in case. It's my other banker, but I give her interest. We need to change this mindset, because the whole idea is that when you retire early, you can do more for yourself and more for the communities that you will live in. As I said, here's how you can become part of the Caribbean FIRE movement. Start the conversations early. Start talking about financial independence with your friends and family. Build a network. The community needs to share strategies, and that's what we're doing right now. We're trying to do our part by sharing my experience, and I'm open to ideas, suggestions, advice, any way that we can help me last longer, help me get better, as well as help me share this message, educate the next generation. I talked to my daughter is 20, my son is 18. They know about this. They're tired of hearing about it. Not necessarily about Caribbean F.I.R.E. and about early retirement, but definitely about being self-determined and not relying on a corporation to determine the quality of life that you have and what you can do and where you can go. If more of us were to take control of our finances, we can change the narrative that we currently have about wealth in the Caribbean. A lot of us, unfortunately, we still have the hang-ups about classism and racism in our countries. And I know it's real, and I'm not using the word hang-ups lightly. But the opportunity is available to us. Even if we weren't born into it, even if we're not getting land from our grandfathers, we can collaborate and work with each other. We can work hard, we can learn, we can do our research, be committed, collaborate, and learn and share. And that's where I find that, we have a lot of room to grow, trusting and collaborating with each other and doing what we say we're going to do and being committed to the goal. I truly believe that the Caribbean F.I.R.E. is possible. Caribbean F.I.R.E. early retirement is possible for anyone willing to put the work in. 18 months into my retirement is still early. If you ask me, is it worth it? Was it worth it? I'd say absolutely. I will say though that being in the middle of this and being the architect of this, you now find yourself doing something that's different. Like all entrepreneurs knew from a long time ago, all self-employed sole proprietors and business owners, a big part of your day, big part of your time is spent on chasing your receivables. In other words, people who owe you money. So while we do this, while we're retired, we still have a property portfolio to manage. We have a property manager, but we still have to spend a lot of time making calls just to collect money. And a lot of businesses, Caribbean businesses, they probably have more money out or owed to them than they have in the bank. So I'm making a special appeal to persons. If you really want to support Caribbean businesses, you really want to support Caribbean professionals and our Caribbean business sector, pay your debt. And even for me, if I can't pay all, I pay some. And you tell the service provider that you owe when you're going to pay them. If you say you're going to pay some, make sure you actually show up and you do what you're supposed to do. But the idea is, it's always better to pay a little bit of something, over time, than paying nothing with that hope or promise of one day I'm going to clear it all off. Invariably, I found that never happens. So pay a little bit more, keep the cash flow going, keep the money in the economy. Okay, so you've been listening to another episode of the Caribbean Property Investing Podcast. This is the second solo episode. I hope you found it interesting. It came from the heart, as my experience. And feel free to send me feedback, comments. I'll be glad to hear from you. Remember, subscribe to the podcast, leave a comment, leave a review, share with someone who is thinking about it, someone you think can benefit from it. And let's build that, Caribbean F.I.R.E. movement together. Until next time, stay focused, stay free, and keep investing.
Congratulations and thank you for tuning in to the Caribbean's first property investing podcast. We want to help Caribbean people create wealth and achieve financial freedom through property investing. Our show provides general advice based on personal experiences and is for educational purposes only. For more information, resources, and past episodes, visit us at CaribbeanPropertyInvesting.com. Remember to click the subscribe button so you never miss a show. Let's go.